Green recording. Okay, so welcome guys. Back again with this Daniel back again with the Rich 20 Something Expert series, and the whole goal of this series is to talk to other entrepreneurs who are working online who figured out at least one part of the secret to the industry, which is figuring out how to get yourself out there and promote yourself, and also become a better person by helping other people online. And so today we're talking with James Clear, and James has a lot of things going for him. I've actually, it's kind of funny because you know how you'll see someone online and then you'll see them in another place and you won't make the connection. So like I think I saw Passive Panda a while ago, and then I was on like the American Express Open forum. I'm like, James Clear, Passive Panda, didn't make the connection, and now I made it. So James, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here, man. I appreciate it, and yeah, I'm excited to get started.
Happy to have you. So why don't you just give us a little bit of background on who you are and what you're about and what you do.
Sure. So, I mean, the real short version for me right now is that I'm an online entrepreneur and a travel photographer. The longer version, or the 2-minute version,
Right.
is that I've always been interested in health and fitness and medicine. And I played baseball in undergrad. I've always had sort of that fitness side. And then I was also a biomechanics major, so I had the science piece. When I was in grad school, when I was in business school, I worked at a medical practice for a little while, an orthopedic practice, and so I always had like this vein of health and fitness that I was interested in. But at the same time, while I was in business school, I was working in the Center for Entrepreneurship, and so while I was there, I saw people starting a lot of really cool companies. Got to sort of dip my feet in the water in the venture capital side of things, and learn how that all worked. And so while I was doing these two separate things, the health side of things and then the entrepreneurship side of things, I had always known that I was excited about medical school or thinking about going or was interested in being a doctor. That was one of the reasons why I was working in medical practice. But one thing that I saw when I was there, and you can probably imagine this, a lot of doctors get out of school, they spend the first 5 years paying their loans off, and
Yeah.
then they do that, and they look around and they say, well, this doctor has a big house and a nice car, so I'd like to get a big house and a nice car. And it sort of spirals into this thing where they've worked for 15 or 20 years and they're making good money and they're doing a job that helps a lot of people. But the one thing that they sort of lose a lot of the time is choice and like freedom. They like have to keep working those hours so
Wow.
that they can continue that lifestyle. And there are a lot of parts about being a physician that I love, but I didn't want that, right? I wanted to make sure that I had freedom or choices or options. And so I thought, well, one of the ways I could do that is to start a business that could pay eventually for me going to medical school. So that was about 2 years ago, and I gave myself, at the time I said 2 to 3 years. It'll probably end up being about 3, maybe 3.5, depending on admission cycles. But next year I'm planning on applying, and in the last 2 years I've built a business that that can fund my lifestyle and pay for that, and hopefully give me the freedom to travel. And at the same time, one of the reasons I wanted to do that is because a lot of the doctors I saw were working in hospitals and sort of boxed into a particular place. And, I wanted to have the option, the freedom to go, if I wanted to do work in a developing nation, for example, for 3 months, I could do that. Or, if I wanted to work on my travel photography and sort of highlight the health aspects of a particular area for a few months, I could do that. And so that was sort of the goal getting started with this business. Like, what am I trying to build? What am I working towards? And there are other aspects as well. We can talk about those as we go on, but that's sort of the background of why I got started and where I'm headed with it.
I love you. No, see, okay, here's where I'm coming from with that, because my thing is, and I'm not going to elaborate too much into this because people watch a lot of the interview series, they'll see me harp on this a lot, but I'm 24 right now, and I feel like a lot of my friends are, how you kind of you hit that time in your life where you just finished college, and there are a lot of things you're supposed to be doing. And I feel like the career field is kind of like that YMCA summer pool, the summer camp pool, and everyone's jumping in the pool like, come on, Daniel, come on in. And I'm at like the basin of the pool with my water wings, and I'm like, I don't like what I don't like what I'm seeing here. And the reason is because, just like you said, I feel like you might have a career that you like, but you lose a lot of choice. You lose a ton of choice. And I also have always really felt, I'm just really passionate about the idea that being a jack of all trades is a mastery of sorts. It's actually a true mastery in my opinion. And I interviewed someone yesterday, and one point I made is that it's eerie that you're talking about, because I didn't know you were actually going to apply to medical schools. I didn't know that.
Sure.
And one point that I made is, I would love to be a doctor or a lawyer or engineer, but I don't define myself by that profession. Those are just things I enjoy doing. You know, I would love to be able to help people in that way, but I don't want to say I am a doctor and now I'm in that pigeonhole and that is me. My career or my passions, they're only a part of me, but they don't represent me. You know,
Sure.
and wouldn't it be awesome to be able to do these really intensive career paths without having to worry that now you have to do this just to maintain what you're used to.
Sure.
You know?
Well, I think of two things when you mention them. So the first is, when I was assessing my options after business school, and I was in the same position where the vast majority of my classmates, in fact, almost every one, when we graduated, went to the regular corporate job. Now, part of that is because that's what an MBA program typically grooms you for.
Yeah.
But the main thing that I noticed when I was working in the medical practice is that I was enjoying the work I was doing. I had a lot of things that I was able to sort of have my hands in. It was exciting. But I would go home each day, and the biggest thing that I would feel, it felt unfulfilling because I didn't feel fully utilized. So, I would come home and say, man, there's so much more I could give to this job, but I'm not being asked to give it, right?
Yes.
There's so many more ways I could contribute, but I'm not being asked to contribute that. And I knew that if I started something on my own, you have to be fully utilized.
Yeah.
Because not just because in the beginning it's up to you and you are the CEO and the janitor and everything in between, but also because you're the one who sets the direction and the strategy for the company and the vision, and so you can naturally guide things towards the areas that are your strengths and the areas where you can contribute the most value.
Absolutely.
And, I think that's really what it's all about for the most part. I mean, I'll use health as an example. So I compete in Olympic weightlifting right now, and it's been fun for me to learn that and be a part of that team and everything. But the result of being in the gym a lot is that you see a lot of dudes like bodybuilders or whatever flexing in the mirror and everything. And it's great that you're in shape, but it's not all about you, right? Like the goal of being healthier, of establishing. This is just one example, but the goal of being healthier, of establishing this awesome rock solid body should be to give you the opportunity to contribute to the world around you.
Wow.
Not just to. I mean, I think a lot of times we take for granted, especially health, right? Like this is why you hear about people having regrets on their deathbed and stuff, right? They don't realize the opportunity.
I saw that post, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That health provided them until it's gone, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a similar. You can make a similar argument for the way that you work, right? And the things that you do, right? It's not just about finding a job that you feel great about or that you're excited about. It is about that. I mean, that's a piece of it. But what it's really about is what's the job where you can contribute the most. Because when you contribute value, you feel utilized, you feel worthwhile, you feel like, people respect the fact that I'm doing something that helps them. And, it's sort of that natural thing of, whenever you give more of yourself, you end up being the one who gets it, right?
Counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. It doesn't seem to be that in the first place. But I would say that was one of the first things I thought I would mention all that is one of the reasons I made that decision was so that I could be fully utilized.
Well, and one thing that you really hit on that I completely agree with and relate to is the idea that when you money is kind of like oxygen in that way. So it's not like we're out here chasing this money just for money's sake. Money allows you to have the freedom to give the most, because sometimes maybe giving the most might be working in a developing nation, helping really sick people in other countries. But a lot of times money will be a barrier to that. So people will say, do I want to live poor and help the poor, or do I want to live rich and only cater to the rich?
Yeah, and there really are there's many more opportunities to help when you do have a lot of money. So
Right.
I'll give you an example. I was in Russia for a conference last month, and I got to meet Richard Branson while I was there.
Cool.
And Branson's a billionaire, so he has a lot of options. And one of the coolest things.
Really?
So like one thing that he just did, he has this private island in the Bahamas, Necker Island or whatever. And
I've seen
the species of lemurs that they're endangered. They don't have a habitat anymore. They're like habitat got destroyed. So he was like, yeah, just take them to the island. Let them live on there. So he's saving an endangered species of animals, and the only reason he's able to do it is because he's got billions of dollars and owns a private island.
Right.
So money definitely gives you the opportunity to make contributions to society and be more valuable. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with building a wonderful business and making a lot of money and giving yourself the opportunity to not only live a great life but also contribute more to the world around you. I think I don't have anything wrong with people who, like you said, the phrase like live poor and help the poor, right? And I don't have anything wrong with that. Right? That's awesome if that's how you want to be. But I think a lot of times, sometimes we'll get wrapped up in this like martyrdom
Yeah.
thing where we think everybody, in order to make a difference, everybody has to like sacrifice.
Yeah.
To, and I'm very much of the abundance mindset where it's like the goal should be to lift everybody up the ladder,
Yeah.
not to like tell everybody to stay down on the lower rung, right?
Yeah.
Like sacrifice down. Like, you should live a great life, and the goal should be to lift everybody else up to a great life as well, not to force us all to sacrifice and suffer together so that we can do good.
I don't know if you've read any of like Dan Brown stuff, but I think of like Opus Dei, like the self-flagellation, where they're hitting themselves with the.
Sure.
You're like.
And like I said, there's nothing wrong with sacrificing for a good cause. Like I'm all for that, but I really think the end goal should be how do we raise everybody up as opposed to suffering together.
No, it's you're making me laugh too because I used to compete in natural bodybuilding, and at 19 I almost went pro, and I got so obsessive. I mean, bodybuilding, weightlifting, you can get very obsessive in these sports.
Sure.
And I just one day I was posing in the mirror, man, I looked great, and I'm like, wait a minute, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Not because I didn't enjoy it, but I'm like, I'm literally because it's a very selfish sport too. So you're like, man, I am not in fact, I'm hurting all my relationships. Why am I doing this? And so. I'm not going to go into the fitness stuff, but since then, I'm much more functional now. I do martial arts and work on being able to keep myself healthy and then just helping other people. But the whole
and you're not going to find anybody who believes in strength training more than I do. Like I am all for it, and I love that fitness is a proxy for becoming better everywhere else.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you can do if you can squat 10 more pounds this week than you did last week, then guess what? That's like clear improvement.
Yeah. It's quantifiable.
Person,
right? Yeah.
And I love that. So I'm all for it, but I just think that a lot of times people get so obsessed with their own health that they forget that the goal of it all, or the opportunity it provides, is to bring value to the world around.
Yeah, and it can also go the other way too. Sometimes you can be so obsessed with the health that it actually becomes unhealthy, both psychologically and then also physically. When you talk about, especially bodybuilders and powerlifters, and all that, what could happen, all that kind of stuff. But so talk to us. So now we know the context from where you're coming in terms of why you want to build your business and what you're doing, what your goals are. Talk to us a little bit about what you actually do. I mean, I know there's Passive Panda, and how do you actually make money?
Yeah. So when I started, I had a couple goals, and one of them was to learn how to build a platform online because I figured. So to answer your question, most of my money comes from two websites, one in the travel space and one in freelancing and entrepreneurship, which is what Passive Panda is. Now, so I do online marketing, and most of it is through email marketing. We can talk about the specifics of all that stuff if you want. But the reason I started there and not in health and fitness, which is what I really am passionate about, is because I figured whatever I did first, I was going to totally screw up. So
yeah.
I wanted to learn first and figure out how to build an audience online. But I also wanted to make sure that I learned how to use an online platform as opposed to, say, like starting a restaurant or something.
Right.
Because I know that eventually, which I'm prepping for this launch right now, eventually I'm going to launch my own site, my own work about health and medicine, right? And that will be my life's work. But I want to make sure I understand that platform. And if you really care about an idea or a set of values, then you're going to want to get it into as many people's hands as possible.
Yeah.
Right? And nothing scales like the web. So I wanted to learn how to understand that. So that was why I got started there. And Passive Panda was the first business I started. I started that about 2 years ago. I started talking about the focus of it is how to earn more money but it's a heavy tilt towards freelancing and entrepreneurship. And I started it because I was freelancing at the time, and I just got done with business school. And so, I felt like I could contribute something to the conversation.
Yeah.
And so I started talking about that, and then, it's the name. If you just looked at Passive Panda, you might think it's about passive income, but I really don't talk about passive income that much. Mostly I talk about legitimate strategies for marketing and growing your business, branding, and all that stuff. And, everybody who reads that site, for the most part, wants to make more sales or get more customers, and so I talk about ways to do that.
Yeah. It's similar to what I'm doing on Rich 20 something, which is basically teaching, because I think that in that 19 to 29 gap, I think that most people they're not even aware unless you're really looking for it, you're not even really aware that you can take your ideas and turn them into like physical products that people will consume. Or
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting is that's definitely true. There's such an opportunity for freelance work now that it really hasn't been around before. I mean,
yeah,
especially in the last like decade, it's really just exploded. I think that our generation, over the next like 15 years or so, you're going to see a lot of your friends transition into doing freelance work via the web.
yeah,
Because the tools are there now that make it easy. You don't have to be a programmer or designer to have a website anymore.
yeah,
The payment options have been there for a little while and are easy to use. And the ability to spend time online, or the idea of spending your workday online, isn't really that foreign to people.
no,
And so all the opportunities are there. And the great thing is, previously, before the web, everybody who was your friend or the people you worked with, it was all based on geography. It was like who went to my school, who was on my sports team, and then you hoped that the people that were around you happened to be interested in what you were in or happened to want to buy what you were selling. Now, you can connect with anybody based on interest instead of geography. So
yeah.
even for people who are freelancers in like relative niche spaces, can create a job for themselves and connect with customers online. So there's a big opportunity.
I think there's also that dichotomy that you're talking about, how people will start transitioning to freelance and online, but there's also still that fledgling group that's like, no, I want to make my resume, submit it to my company, and I want to get my gold watch. Like, there are people who still want that lifestyle. Is that still out there, you think?
It's what's known, right? It's like that lifestyle is very. It's, first of all, the reason you'll see it happen over the next 15 years or so is it's going to take that long for people to get away from their parents
Yeah.
and start to
Yeah.
discover that that's like an option.
Yeah.
Because for the one generation above us, that still is kind of foreign. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not natural. And so as a result, you're raised to think that you should get a regular job and then you go to college, and that's what you're going to college for, is to get out of college and then work and all that.
It's a very linear process.
That's totally fine. Like I have nothing wrong with people working corporate jobs. It's totally awesome. Like, I have some friends who have great jobs and are doing work that they're excited about, and that's amazing. But the opportunity to do things that are very tailored to your interest is becoming readily available. I think you're going to see more people go for that.
Yeah, and I think what people have to get out of the mindset of it, and also not be so afraid of, is now you don't need to take a linear process from school to work, then linear promotions, and then apex. You can mix and match, and also you can connect to new opportunities via almost like a web pattern rather than a line pattern. You can bounce around, not aimlessly, but focused, but know that there's more than one way to get where you're going.
Yeah.
And like, even if I talk to my dad, who's again is like one generation up from us, the idea of him doing anything but like, because he works for waste management, so he lived on the back of a truck throwing like tons of trash every day. But it would be completely foreign for him to not clock in. Like, it blows mind. Like, he's like, I'm not gonna. No, I need to go to work. And I'm like,
Right.
I am working. I'm here. I'm working. And so it's not even. It's a concept that you're right. Like, we're gonna have to get maybe 1 or 2 generations away before people. Like, in 2 generations, people are really gonna be this is gonna be the norm.
Sure.
But at the same time, even as things become decentralized, I think you'll just find the shift. Big corporations will just be hiring people freelance from home, but there'll still be that distinct entrepreneur class of people who don't want any association with the big power. And I think that's what you'll see. So on Passive Panda, talk to us a little bit about marketing strategy, because I don't even think I'm signed up for the Passive Panda newsletter. Do you basically use Aweber? Do you kind of what do you do? What's your process?
Yeah, so I really don't write blog posts on there that frequently. Maybe, let's say, twice a month. But I have the Aweber is my email newsletter provider or whatever. Yeah, my email subscription service. I spent the first 6 months or so really focusing heavy on promotion. So I wrote a lot of guest posts. I tried to do as many interviews as possible. I was, just trying to be out there, introduce myself to people in the industry. I was sending maybe 100 emails a week to new people, and then
100 emails a week to other people in the industry.
Yes.
Okay.
And then once my name started to become more well known, or I was at least on people's radar, I just focused on, and I was trying to create great content the whole time. As I started to phase out of introducing myself to everybody, I started to focus more on conversion. So how do I design the site so that people do sign up? And And Passive is pretty well designed right now to get email subscriptions. So if people are interested in that, they can go ahead and look and see how the site's set up and where I have forms and why. And I tried to learn about copywriting and conversion, and that obviously helps the email conversions as well. So I test different headlines and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I went through that whole process, and then I don't. When you ask like how do you make money, I have a lot of friends who ask that too, because I don't have products really like readily for sale on the site. I do it all through the email list.
The funnel,
so
yeah.
Once you sign up, I start giving you content, and I'll take them through and occasionally offer a product or whatever. So that's the basic setup of how it works.
Do you have like scheduled launch, or do you do like perpetual launch? Are you always in launch mode?
Well, so I actually have tested it. I was doing scheduled launches for about 3 or 4 months, and that worked really well. And then I spent the last 3 or 4 months doing this like automated perpetual launch via autoresponder.
Yeah.
I don't really like the setup to begin with, but it also hasn't performed as well. So I'll probably go back to the scheduled launches next year.
It depends on the person, the market.
It depends on everything. It depends on the price point. It depends on the product. It depends on how good your sales copy is. It depends on who the readers are and what they expect. So you have to try everything, because certain things will work for you and certain things will work for other people. So it's not the answer people want to hear, but the only way around it is really to try it all and then see what your audience resonates with.
No, absolutely. I don't know if you've done any research or looked at any of Jeff Walker's stuff, but he talks a lot about that. Yeah.
I don't know Jeff personally, but I know his product launch formula.
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't know him personally either, but oh, I got a text message. So talk a little bit about, and just as comfortable as you are with as deep as you want to go, just can you give us a little idea of, okay, so you've been doing this for about 2 years. Can you give us some metrics in terms of like subscribers, where you started, where you are, income, not just as close as you want to get?
So it took me, I've been doing it almost 2 years. It took me 3 months to get my first 1,000 subscribers. It took me 6 months to get to 4,000. And then the next 6 months, I really hit sort of my stride, and I was at like 11 or 12,000 after the first year.
Mm-hmm.
So these are email subscribers, and then now it's somewhere between 15 and 20. I haven't checked. So that's how many subscribers. It took 6 months before I was making like a full-time livable income. I was making money doing web design for like insurance agencies and stuff. I just like would build like simple websites for them for the first like 6 months before I was like making enough of my own products. That is partially my fault. One of the big things or suggestions I would give to anybody who's getting started out is it's going to be hard, because you're not going to know your audience that well, you're not going to know your voice that well, and you're not going to know the market that well in the beginning. But I would do whatever you can to try to have something for sale from the start, or at least from like 1 month in. I just kept trying to convince myself that, okay, I just need to focus on building the audience. Once I get to 1,000 subscribers, or once I get to 5,000 subscribers, then I can launch a product, or I'm not big enough yet to make enough money off this anyway. I'm not going to launch something and just make $200, or stuff like that. Like I had all this type of self-doubt, or this questioning. So some of those things might have been true. I might have only made $200 if I would have launched something in the first month, but it's better than nothing, and it proves to you that the system works. Yeah. So I think that those small wins are important, and I won't lie, like those first 6 months were tough for me, because I wasn't making any money, because I didn't have anything for sale.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that you would not make money when you aren't selling anything. It's weird how much of a struggle it is. You're like, is this even worth it? It's like you're not even giving yourself a chance. So
yeah.
I would say that was one of my biggest lessons learned. And then just learning the copywriting and the email marketing is what's really made it a viable option for me.
Now, so you talked about within your first 3 months, because I've had Rich 20 up for maybe about a month now, and I'm actually kind of doing what you're doing. I'm reaching out to people who know me, or who don't know me, to introduce ourselves, and that's kind of the whole concept. I don't try to be surreptitious with this. The whole concept of the whole idea of having an interview series is to get an opportunity to meet people who I don't know. That's, I mean, it's a dual purpose. One, it creates content for my readers, and two, it introduces me to people I don't know. So it's a win-win. So how did you go from no one knowing you to even getting people to subscribe to your list? You know, are you saying were you kind of just randomly doing social media stuff, or were you reaching out to other people who already had more of a foothold and saying, hey, what do you think about this? Would you promote this? Like, what were you doing?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. So the first thing I'll say is I think the natural reaction of a lot of people who haven't done it before, or like just getting started, or wondering like how do I get started, is it can't be that easy. Right?
Yeah.
Like there's got to be some secret or some trick or something to it. But really, for me, mostly what it was just hustle and putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
So just emailing 100 people a week like that. That is a lot of work.
That's a lot. It is.
To find 100 new people and then write targeted emails to each one.
And it can't be because I'm doing that too, and I'm finding it can't be like it can't. You really almost can't even copy and paste an old email because you can, but it has to be really targeted.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to. I don't think I didn't copy and paste. I tried to make it personal for each one, and I do the same thing now. I don't email as many people, but I try to make sure that the people I'm emailing are really targeted to like would really be interested in the work I'm doing.
So what are you saying in the emails?
I can send you a copy of some of the ones I sent out, but usually they're really short, and the basic idea is just, I mean, literally it would be like maybe, let's say, 5 sentences, and it would be, hey, I came across your work on Twitter, or my friend so-and-so mentioned you. It seems like we hang out with a lot of the same people online. I'm really excited about blank, and then drop a link to whatever they worked on, and then just tell them, like in my case, I would say, I run a site for freelancers and entrepreneurs called Passive Panda. It's been up for about 3 months right now. I'm at about 1,000 subscribers. I'd love to talk with you more about what you do online and and just get to know everybody in the space. And it really wasn't more than that. And I'd be like, are you up for Skype sometime next week or something like
Yeah.
that? And then you just have the conversation and see where it goes. And the cool thing is, some people I've had a couple conversations where it was just sort of they just, I don't know, if they weren't into it or they're awkward socially or whatever, and it just didn't resonate. And that's fine. But most of the time, it's a really good person, and you hit it off pretty well. And I mean, you're naturally interested in the same stuff because you're doing work on the same things.
Yeah.
So that part's easy. So that was one thing I did promotion-wise, just to get to know the people in the industry. The other thing I did that I don't think a lot of people do or enough people do is I tried to pitch like major media. So I've written for U.S. News and World Report for months now, and I've had a couple articles hit the front page of their site or the front page of Yahoo.com, and I mean that has sent thousands of email subscribers.
Yeah.
Now, I'm glad I did it later, so like after the first 6 months, because then I had the conversion thing figured out. So when I got 15,000 visits in a day, I was able to convert those people to email subscribers as opposed to just losing them and just having a big spike. So I would say get your act together conversion-wise first before you go start, searching for a bunch of traffic. But so that was one way. And then, online media outlets, people with popular Twitter feeds and everything. If I wrote something that was targeted to what they were doing, I would send them an email and say, hey, I just wrote this. Thought your audience would love it. If not, no big deal. And then people, online blogs, like really popular blogs that sort of aggregate content, like Life Hacker or something like that. Like if I have like a tips article, I would just send it to their tips line and be like, hey, I wrote this. Seems like the type of thing your audience is interested in. And then most of the time, they wouldn't say anything, but a couple times they got back to me, and they send 10,000 people over in the next couple days. So that kind of stuff is all good. I think it's on you. It's a responsibility of the business owner to promote it. It's not like build it and they will come. But it all comes back in the end to I would spend 10 to 20 hours on each article. So the content I was creating was really detailed and focused and useful and practical. And
did you say spend 10 to 20 hours on each article you're writing?
Yeah. So I told you I don't write many articles per month.
Yeah. Wow.
So I would spend like 1 week writing one article.
Wow.
For one article I wrote, I interviewed 70 people. So like I was putting a lot of work into the articles that I created. I didn't put that many out, but the ones I did put out were very, very good. And so when I put that much work in, I was able to email somebody and be like, hey, this has information that people would really like, and if they happen to click on it and check it out, they'd be like, yeah, this is good. And so they'd send it out to people.
Wow.
So putting the work in, I mean, no promotional strategy will make up for poor content.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good you are at doing stuff. It's just going to be a flash in the pan if you're not performing. So I spend most of the time on the content creation first, but then I also do the promotional stuff.
So you're only posting maybe once or twice a month to pass a Panda, but then you have a lot of other places where your articles might pop up. So you might end up seeing fresh content from you a couple times a week, but on different sites.
Yeah, I mean, I was writing a lot of guest posts at that time. So the first 6 months, I don't know how many I wrote. What's over 20, I think, probably. So I had 20 articles going up around the web in addition to the ones that I was writing that were hopefully, if they were getting promoted, getting sent out by Lifehacker or a Twitter feed here or there or whatever. So so you could see my work in a lot of different places. My goal, and what I'm trying to do now, is to have great content, but to seed it out to people wherever they are. So for example, what I'm working on now with my site, I'm trying to figure out ways that I can, on jamesclear.com, which is all about like health, is I'm trying to figure out ways that I can create excellent content on that, but then have it either republished or distributed across a variety of networks, so that I can spend all my time focusing on creating one article, but then I can have 10 different outlets.
Syndication, basically.
Basically. It's hard because syndication is something that like news sites do with each other, right? It's like what U.S. News and Reuters do with each other, or CNN. But individual blogs have a hard time. So I'm working hard to try to figure out ways to get that to happen. And if I do, then I think it'll be great, because then I won't have to worry about guest posting. I can just create content once and send it out to people across the web wherever they're at.
That's really almost ingenious, because one of the big problems with especially creating a lot of content is that you'll find that as you develop your niche more, you start to kind of, maybe you have like 5 to 10 topics that you talk about most of the time. But then if you want to write a different article for another site, even if it's on the same thing, you got to completely change the article around, because it has to be original content. So you'll find yourself writing on the same thing with different words over and over again. So, but if you could just syndicate, you could write one really good article, syndicate it, and then get it out to people.
Yeah, I'll just get on my soapbox here for a second. One thing I hate about that is that the goal, I think the goal of creating great content should be to get it in the hands of people who can use it.
Yeah.
And everybody wants unique content, but like nobody's going to get offended if they open an article on one site and they're like, oh, I already read this one. They'll move on in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's going to get, it's not like an offensive thing to see an article that you already read before. So, the goal should be to get it to as many people as possible. And I realize that, I don't know, like the New Yorker or Fast Company or New York Times, like they're very, very, they don't want to ever republish anything, even a sentence from a writer that they used in a different article.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, it gets into these weird arguments about like self-plagiarism and stuff, which isn't really possible. Like you can't plagiarize things that you
self-plagiarism. That's a new one.
There was this big article about Jonah Lehrer, who's this popular writer who just lost his job at the New Yorker because he used pieces of old articles in a new one that he wrote.
That he had written.
Yeah, that he had written. Right. Yeah. Stuff that he had already wrote, and then put it in another article that he wrote, and it happened like, I don't know, dozens of times or a half dozen times, and they were not happy about it. Whatever. So in addition to that, and there was an issue with him like misquoting someone in a book that he wrote. So whatever. Anyway, that's a whole separate thing. But my only point is that the goal should be to get the content, right? To get the best information possible in the hands of people who can use it and who can benefit from it. And so I don't really, like I said, I'm working on figuring out how to syndicate it, but I don't really care if I have the same article go up on 10 sites, because there are different people reading all those sites.
Right.
My goal is to help as many people as possible, but that's a good thing.
Right.
So, I don't know. There is value in creating unique content, and I try to create unique content every week. But after a while, a lot of the things that you talk about do fall into that same vein that you talk about.
Yeah.
So you can always talk about a similar idea in a different way, or with a different example, or highlight a person who's putting it in action. And there are plenty of ways to talk about the same things in a different way. But if you have a great article that really helps people, then I think it should be in as many people's hands as possible.
No, I totally agree. I mean, unfortunately, though, sometimes you got to play the game a little bit, and
Sure.
Well, I guess one thing I talk to my listeners about is just the idea that you can't, just like you said, you can't assume that if you've put up one post, let's say about, I don't know, about making passive income. If you've written one blog post about that, you can't say, well, I've talked about that. Now I've extinguished that lead. I mean, you can make a blog post about that. You can make a YouTube video. You can do a podcast. You can do there's many ways that you can take the same content, redistribute it in a different format, and basically that's how you build your brand too. Because there are certain things that you just talk about a lot.
And you should too, because one, that's what people come to you for, is to hear about those topics, and two, people come in new all the time.
Right.
So when someone new comes, they haven't heard that all the
right.
And that's why you see a lot of bloggers go back to their archives from the year before, look at what performed well, and then write another article on that same topic.
Yeah.
Because people want to hear more about it, and so there's a lot of new readers that didn't hear it the first time. So this is why we have topics and themes about our sites, right? Don't write about just everything. It's because people want to hear information on a particular topic. Exactly.
Yeah, they're coming to you for a specific reason. Sure. So yeah. I mean, I think you kind of summed it up. I mean, it sounds like and 100 people a week. I'm not even emailing close to. I mean, I need to step up my game. I mean, I think I'm emailing like 7 to 10. I figured like 40 or 50 in a month is pretty good, but. Jeez, I mean, are you being realistic? Are you really doing like 100 people? I mean, I just want to know.
Yeah, I don't anymore, but there was a streak there for the first 3 months that I was basically I was just trying to hit up everybody, and it was a lot. I mean, I almost think there's more value in setting a goal for yourself, like a daily goal, like if you did like 5 people a day or 10 people a day,
right?
Because if you do that, then by the end of the year, I mean, you've emailed 3,000 people,
yeah.
So it's like. I think that getting in the habit of doing it all the time is really where the real value is. And so I'm working on getting into small habits like that I can actually do every day. And the cool thing is, once you really get it down, so like for me, I structure it so that my creative time's in the morning. So like I'll wake up, write the first thing in the morning. So when I'm writing, so let's say I wake up each day, I write for 3 hours, and then the next thing I do is I email 10 people. And so then my morning is planned out like every day. Like I know what I'm doing, right? I write, and then I email, and then I, whatever, eat lunch or whatever's next, right?
Yeah.
And so when you start to give yourself those little things, you don't even really have to think about them. It's just what you do next. And the sum of all that work by the end of the year is massive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, did you notice that even without, and actually, you kind of hit on a point. I don't know if you've looked into any Eben Pagan stuff. He talks a lot about that type of habit forming, like purposely, intentionally building habits, to make because willpower can get extinguished very quickly if you have to force yourself to do something all the time. But creating habits and patterns makes it easier to do things without having to put in a lot of mental strain.
Yeah. I talk a lot about habit formation. I'm actually working on a project right now, an experiment where I'm working towards doing 100 push-ups in a row, and so I'm talking about building a habit of that because that's different than, say, the habit of like brushing your teeth, which only takes like a minute, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like doing a push-up workout takes 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's a different type of habit. So anyway, I think a lot about that. I'm not familiar that much with even Megan stuff. I mean, I know what he's done, but I don't read his stuff or pay attention that much. But I think that habit formation is really worth that. Maybe someone who's more talented than me. There's a lot of people out there who can handle 100 emails a week, but that's not a pace that I can maintain. I'm more a fan of doing things that you can maintain.
Well, now what was I going to say? So did you notice that as you were writing those emails without even necessarily trying to, because I'm really one thing I'm trying to kind of hit home with people is that you have to remember, and we'll wrap this up because I want to protect your time, but you have to remember that the people on the other side of the computer, they're not robots, they're real people, right? And it's easy to forget that when you're just typing away. So did you notice that there was a steady correlation between without necessarily you even trying, the more you reach out to people, the more your subscriber base grew?
Um, yes, I mean it definitely. Yeah, that's interesting to think about because when I talk to people, I usually don't actively ask them to promote.
Right.
So, like, I still have never done an affiliate launch. So I've never like asked people like, hey, will you pitch my product? Like,
Yeah.
the only time I've really asked people to promote me or to partner with me is when I've done webinars for people. And I did that for a little period of about 4 months, and that was about it. So it's interesting to think about, though, because a lot of times if people are just interested in what you're doing and you become friends, it may be natural for them to send stuff out on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, or tell another friend about it, and that will result in a traffic increase. But I really haven't had most of the big spikes I've seen in subscriber growth and traffic have been a result of working with media, and
Yeah.
not a result of a particular relationship that I made with a blogger or something. Usually when I connect with people, I have one or two. I do it for one or two reasons. One, I just want to get to know the people that are in the space and develop friendships with people who are also trying to do the same thing because it's likely they're interested in similar stuff. And two, a lot of times you want to be careful about getting feedback from the same type of people all the time. But a lot of times they're great people to get feedback from. Does this landing page make sense? What would you change about it? Does this article resonate with you? Is that a good idea? What do you think your readership would think of that? Is that whatever. So they're great people to get feedback from sometimes and make your own work better. And so those are probably the two main reasons that I like talking to people in the industry, not so that I can drive traffic.
Yeah. And I think probably like you said, I mean it's a combination approach. It's talking to people, it's media, it's writing more, it's kind of everything.
Yeah, for sure. I tried all kinds of stuff that didn't work at all. I think, like I said it earlier, but you really do have to try everything and just see what works for you. And eventually, you'll hit on 2, 3, 4 strategies that do seem to send traffic to your site a lot, and just run with those.
How do you approach media? What's the process to that? Just briefly, because I know you gotta go.
I've done it differently a bunch of times. I mean, a lot of times I'll just send cold email pitches. Just based on an article I wrote that I thought would be useful or an idea that I have that I think they'd be interested in. So I'll pitch people all the time just based on that. The other times I've had people introduce me to someone. When I wrote for American Express Open Forum, I had a friend who was writing articles for them, and I was like, "Hey, I'm interested in writing here. How do you do that?" And she was like, "Oh, I'll put you in touch with the editor."
Yeah.
So that was that. So. It depends. A lot of times, one of the best bets is just to get in touch with the writers who are already writing there, and they can tell you the best way to get started.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, James, I really appreciate you. If people want to get in contact with you, if they want to kind of know more about what you're doing, or get to kind of get into your world, what do they need to do to get in touch with you?
Well, they can send me email whenever they want. James@jamesclear.com, and jamesclear.com is going to be the home of my life's work. So if you wanna see what I'm up to or what's going on, travel photography, health stuff, just go to jamesclear.com and I'll see you there.
Awesome, man. Well, you were extremely generous with your time, and I appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
Thanks. Sounds good.
Yeah.